Alright, so this is forecast map discussion number 2. So starting off looking at the continental United States, you can see temperatures are actually pretty cold up here in Canada and parts of the central part of the United States, the northern part anyway. Temperatures down to the 20s actually, going all the way down into near Oklahoma. The temperature's still in the 30s. Even Texas is in the 30s and 40s. That's pretty cold even for this time of year. Temperatures also in the 30s. Moving into about Ohio, you can see there's probably the cold front boundaries around this area right through the middle of Ohio. You got 52 here, and then we got temperatures in the 30s behind it with a noticeable wind shift from the west-northwest to what is more a southwesterly direction. So definitely a frontal boundary of some sort, at least right in this area. Well, it gets a little harder to see as you head further south. Maybe you can argue there's one through Tennessee and Kentucky, but that remains to be seen. The winds are a little less. Can't really tell with the directional change if there's really a front there or not. You'd have to rely more on the temperature and 15-degree drop. That's pretty significant. So probably a front there, and that will be heading into our area pretty soon. So taking a look at the minimum temperatures this morning, we did have apparently at this Berkeley Township. This is telling me had 32 degrees, so that is officially frost. There was a 31 in Basking Ridge apparently as well. It's a little bit of frost temperatures, although mostly in the low 40s, upper 30s. Oh, there's a 29 actually here in Walpack. Didn't notice that. But yeah, pretty cold temperatures last night. A little warmer towards South Jersey. Had a 58 here in Atlantic City. That's no surprise. Probably a little bit of sea influence. Some 50s along the direct coastline. Seaside Heights, West Cape May. Nothing too surprising there with a ocean influence, especially with a south to southeast, and even a southwest for this part of New Jersey. So right now we are looking at temperatures already in the mid to upper 60s, a couple of low 60s, but you can see here 65, 67. Looking at my station right now, I'm actually up to 69. So definitely looking to get probably into the 70s today at the very least, maybe even some scattered 80s down here, assuming that there's no other influence of cloudiness. I wouldn't really expect too much cloudiness, but it is almost November, late October, October 28th already. So, wouldn't expect too much more heating, so probably mid 70s for most areas is what I would bet. Take a look at this enhanced infrared satellite now. You can see our cold front spanning about where we pointed out earlier, right through Ohio, down through Kentucky, Tennessee, and associated with a nice trough going on there. We also have this mess here, which is going to be bringing in a lot of moisture and a little bit of energy even too into our area tomorrow, probably even into later on, late tonight, maybe even possibly with some effects still being felt into Monday morning. And we're watching this closely to see if it develops. I personally don't think it will develop into a named tropical system. It would be, if it does, it would be Tropical Storm Felipe, which would be ironic because today is Phil's birthday. For those of you that are watching, you all know Phil, I'm sure. But it's got to go through Cuba, and Cuba's it's mountainous. Odds are it's not really going to be able to form over Cuba, and then it's just kind of got this area to go, and by then it should be hooked onto the cold front. So if anything does look a little more organized, because right now it doesn't look entirely organized, just kind of looks like a mess of thunderstorms. I don't really see any kind of rotation center there. It just kind of looks almost like a subtropical jet stream. But it doesn't seem to me to be organized at all right now, other than just being a blob of convection. So I don't really expect that to form into any kind of named tropical system. Looking at the water vapor, you can see there that's this cold front really doesn't have too much moisture with it, but you can see there's a lot of moisture down here. And what's going to happen is this moisture is going to come in up to this area through the Atlantic, and this cold front is also going to be coming in, and there's a wave of low pressure, and when those two meet, you get the wave of low pressure hitting the Atlantic Ocean with a trough going turning more negatively tilted, so digging in. Those things combined coming in with both the Atlantic moisture, although it is relatively dry out there now. You can see these colors. It's pretty dry out there. But when this moisture makes it north, in addition to the digging trough and the cold front, it'll get pulled up all into our area, into New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, etc., all through like this entire section of the Northeast and even up to Maine. A lot of wind gusts off the Jersey Shore. The worst will be most likely off of the Long Island, Rhode Island, Massachusetts areas. Based on the exact track of the storm, I personally think it's just going to come up and make a landfall, if you will, around the New York City area. And you know, we'll get into the models later and what they show, but you know, that would mean that we would get quite a bit of rain. Wind wouldn't be too bad until afterwards, but you know, we'll still see a lot of wind. Nothing that we haven't seen before. We've had plenty of nor'easters in our lives. So, looking at the radar, you can see it's a little bit of snow up in you know, the Wisconsin, Michigan areas. A little bit of maybe even, let's see, is this count? Maybe a little bit of lake effect. There's a little bit of a banding feature. It's a little scattered to be lake effect, so I'm not entirely sure what that might be. Oops. So we've got a nice line of rainfall here, pretty decently thick. Still a lot of moisture. Maybe even some storms, you might argue. A little bit further to the south, you can see all that rain in Florida from that tropical wave. And, you know, you can see they're not too far apart. Maybe tip of the Florida Panhandle to Miami. That's, you know, that's probably about 700-800 miles. That's not very far, so at least not in terms of meteorology. So those will come together pretty soon. So we get in there. So looking at the models, this is the NAM 12Z run. You can see this is around right now, noon, getting a little closer. So it looks like a little bit of snow also in the West Virginia area. That'll be interesting to watch as the cold air hits the mountains, and you know, you get all that temperature dropping, but you still have the precipitation. So you get the rain changing to wet snow. You could see some accumulation there. I'm not going to speculate on how much, mainly because this is more of a New Jersey centered site, so I'm going to focus more on what's happening to New Jersey. So right now, this is 8 a.m. Sunday. The rain will be approaching by 2 p.m. We're looking at some decent rainfall, probably some light rain, light to moderate rain, but a consistent rain nonetheless. And then by the time we get to Sunday night around 8 p.m., got the low coming in full force. It's got heavy rain over an inch, and then continues over another inch. Kind of sits there a little bit, and then just kind of rolls in. Almost tries to double barrel itself, and I think the main center actually splits a little bit. Probably heads up, probably like this. It's a little hard to see. I can, but you know, main point is got a lot of rain coming. A little bit of snow also on the backside in Pennsylvania is possible. I'm a little skeptical that there'll be any accumulations, but it's certainly possible. Could see definitely a little bit, and the rain still affecting us a little bit. It's probably some residue wraparound moisture. Probably won't even happen, most likely. But you know, it still shows we're in the effects of it by 18Z Monday, which is 2 p.m. So well into the afternoon hours, this thing could still be affecting us with a little bit of rain, mostly wind by this point, which will be evidenced in this. So you see, you got 40 knot winds, 40. Okay, yeah, this is in knots. So 40 knot winds, 47 miles per hour. You got a lot of wind. Not too much coming up, but it does get pretty windy. Got a nice onshore flow, so temperatures will most likely be in the 50s at that point. Pretty much a miserable day if you don't like this kind of weather. You know, with that secondary, most of the energy still appears to be offshore at this point. You know, let me get rid of that. Get rid of that arrow there. Let's see if I can. I can't actually move that. I'll just change this to sign. Yeah, I'll change it. Yeah, that'll be fine. So, yeah, you've definitely got. Dang. So you definitely have the main center offshore, and that's gonna. I'll just get rid of these. So you definitely have the main center offshore, and what that does, you have the low coming up here. Yeah, the color is actually worse. Yeah, there it is. Alright, this red looks like it'll work well for this one. So you've got the main center, storm comes up through here, merges around this area, classic scenario there. I think Miller, one of the Millers, I don't remember which one. I think it's Miller A. Whichever one, the storm comes from here, and then you have another sets up there. At any rate, you know, you've got all this chunks of wind. If the storm stays over here and kind of manages to get west of us, then all this wind will be piling in onshore, and we're going to get a lot of wind, possibly even some wind damage, power outages possible. Although I find that to be a little bit unlikely, mainly because storms tend to stay offshore, and with a digging trough, it would make more sense for it to go more like this as the trough becomes more negatively tilted. I accidentally closed one of the 500 millibar tab, but I've got it here, so you can see the euro is fairly a little more or less similar, and it's got, you know, that digging trough. The digging of that trough is gonna be the main driver as to where the storm actually winds up going. So odds are it'll probably dig enough off so that the storm stays offshore and has a path similar to the one I have drawn here. Now, it is possible. Now, it more or less, we will get a lot of wind. You know, you've got that actually has it relatively calm, but here by Monday, there's, you know, all this wind is coming. It's gonna, you know, the models tend to underestimate the wind on land for whatever reason, but got a lot of wind coming. You probably won't lose power, but you can't rule it out if there's some older power lines that, you know, or there's a flimsy one. A lot of rain too, so trees falling down could be an issue as well if you have some older dead trees or ones that are, you know, weaker from whatever reason. Then moving on to the euro, I always like to show the euro because you usually can't get a good version of this model, at least not like this, without having to pay for it. So you can see that euro doesn't really buy into the development of the storm either. Hooks onto the trough, and we get a classic scenario. This one actually has it making landfall around Cape May area, so we could actually see a little bit more wind from this and a little less rain. I personally would rather to just get the rain, but I'm also, you know, it's a classic storm here. We've got, you know, the trough. I'll just show this. Digs in pretty deeply for, especially for this time of year. You usually don't see troughs digging that far to the south. That's more of a December, January, February, even March kind of thing. But it happens. It's happening here, and we get a cutoff low right here. And generally, what will happen with this is as the storm is coming up and the cutoff low is developing, the storm will actually begin to deepen and kind of almost stall right around here, right on top of the cutoff low, in order for the two to become vertically stacked. And once that happens, you've hit the peak intensity of the storm. And this, as a side note, I've actually just hit 70 degrees here at my house, so that's just wanted to let you guys know about that. So we have already hit 70 today, so that's beautiful weather for this time of year. And then it quickly heads out, and we can stay in more of a zonal pattern for the rest of, looks like the next week, with a nice little cutoff low off of California. It is getting into their wet season, so it's not really too surprising. So once again, we have a lot of rain coming in, but with the storm coming like this, we would actually see, at least on areas to the on this side of this line, so this area here, this whole place, even along the Jersey Shore, we would see more of a wind impact from this, and this is a 980. Generally speaking, lows that are along the coast, there's a lot of warm water temperatures. I'll even show you water temperature. This should get me somewhere. I think this is the one. Yeah, so along the North Atlantic coast, you've got warm water, 27 degrees. That's good for hurricanes even to form. So it'll be coming up through here, and even 19 degrees. This is still above average water temperatures in most of this area. So it's going into abnormally warm waters, so that would fuel the cyclogenesis of the storm, allow it to deepen even further. So 980 might even be underdone here. We might see something along the lines of maybe 970 if it really gets going, may even get to 960. I think that's pretty unlikely, but I think this gets even deeper than 980 personally, especially considering the euro tends to underdo things. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. It's certainly possible. Could see this be a little deeper. The winds, you can see we've got onshore flow here with wind knots. These are definitely tropical storm force winds here and even into here. Maximum sustained winds of 51 knots, 58 miles an hour, definitely strong tropical storm force winds. So we could be looking at a decently strong wind event if this were to verify. This one could be a little too far inland for my taste, but it's certainly a possibility. Strong winds throughout, either way. Definitely you probably won't see those classic northeast winds in our neck of the woods, but at least along the coast anyway. It probably anything west of that line could see the northeast winds. Anything east probably won't. But definitely gonna see some pretty decently strong winds here with this one. But after that, it looks like it clears out mostly. Some unfortunately warmer temperatures. Got the 558 line there. So yeah, that's basically it. My idea is let's see, at least 2 inches anywhere behind anywhere in this area. You can see at least 2 inches of rain. This area, that's too far south. So anything in that area definitely is going to see at least 2 inches. Anything north of that is going to see 3, and you could definitely even see some 4 to 5 plus amounts anywhere in this area. Not really in this area. I made it a little too big because this is too far inland, but definitely could see, depending on the exact track, whether it goes here, whether it ends up in here, or somewhere in the middle. You're definitely going to see wherever that track is on the west side of that storm. So on this side of the storm track, if it were to take here. So we've got the low here. Anything on this side of the low is where you're going to see the most rain. And this side over here is where you're going to see all of your worst winds. So wherever it goes, that'll depend on what we see here. And I'm actually curious as to what I was saying earlier. Let's see. Let's see if I was correct or yeah. So not really a Miller A. It was a Miller B. So I was wrong about that. I don't know if I would. It's kind of like actually more of a hybrid because you can see the Miller A takes the path from the Gulf and then rolls up, and Miller B is you've got low coming from the west, and so it's actually a combination of both. So neither really, but at any rate, so gonna be a nice day today. Enjoy it while you can. Looks like we're gonna be heading into at least some fall-like weather for maybe a couple of days at least. Hopefully, this model isn't as warm as these thickness lines would indicate. Stay safe tomorrow. Don't do any unnecessary driving. It's gonna be pretty nasty. Looks like for most of the state. And that's basically it. Have a good day, everyone.